Your presence here is an insult to the very air we pause and breathe.
Your empire is built on lies and—
This is absurd. You can't prove any of this. The truth doesn't need proof when it's this obvious.
You're destroying everything!
You can't keep dodging this, Sterling. The truth is out there, and it's coming for you.
You're overreaching, and you know it. Do me so.
A single drop of water. That's all it took for a billionaire to call me stupid, uneducated, and worthless in front of 50 people. He had no idea I spoke 5 languages, held 2 degrees, or knew exactly how he'd stolen millions from innocent families. What he definitely didn't know: I was about to use every single one of those skills to destroy his empire before dessert arrived. Hey family, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into today's powerful story, I want to share something exciting. We've set a target to hit 1,000 subscribers, and your support means the world. If you enjoy the stories we bring to life here, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. Your subscription isn't just a number, it's a big motivation for me. It encourages me to keep creating more compelling, emotional, and inspiring stories for you every single day. Now, if you've done that, kindly drop your name and tell us where you're watching from in the comment section. I'd love to know and connect with you. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's get into today's story. I became invisible on purpose. For 8 months, I'd been a shadow moving between tables at the Golden Terrace, one of those restaurants where a salad costs $47 and the wine list reads like a mortgage payment. The kind of place where tech moguls closed deals over Wagyu beef, where actresses celebrated in private dining rooms, where old money whispered to new money about investments and acquisitions. I was the perfect waitress. Polite, efficient, forgettable. My name is Jordan Matthews, and I used to be someone else entirely. Someone with ambition. Someone who believed that education and hard work could actually change things. I'd spent 6 years of my life buried in textbooks, first getting my nursing degree, then pushing through law school because I thought, naively, stupidly, that I could help people from both angles. Heal their bodies, fight for their rights, be some kind of guardian angel in scrubs and a power suit. Then the real world taught me what it does to guardian angels. It clips their wings and grounds them in expensive restaurants carrying trays of food they can't afford to eat. The Golden Terrace sat on the top floor of the Meridian building in downtown Chicago, all floor-to-ceiling windows and soft amber lighting that made everyone look like they'd been dipped in honey. The tables were real wood, not that fake veneer nonsense. The chairs cost more than my monthly rent. Even the bathroom had marble countertops and those fancy hand towels you use once and throw away, which seemed like the perfect metaphor for how the people here treated everyone beneath them. I didn't hate the job, exactly. It was easy to disappear into routine. Take the order. Bring the food. Smile without meaning it. Collect the tips. Go home to my studio apartment and try not to think about the person I used to be, the one who thought a law degree from Northwestern and a nursing license would matter. They mattered, all right. They mattered right up until I watched a pharmaceutical company bury evidence about contaminated medication that killed 17 people, including a 9-year-old girl named Destiny whose mother I'd helped through the legal process. Mattered until the lawyers with better connections made my evidence disappear. Mattered until I realized the system I'd invested everything in was just a machine designed to protect people with money from people without it. So I stopped fighting. Started pouring wine instead. The Thursday evening shift was usually quiet until about 7, when the after-work crowd rolled in, traders still buzzing from the stock market close, lawyers celebrating wins or drowning losses, occasionally a local politician pretending they weren't meeting with lobbyists. I liked the rhythm of it. The predictability. Nobody looked at me too closely. Nobody asked questions. I was just the black girl who remembered drink orders and kept her mouth shut. Exactly what I wanted to be. My section that night was the west corner, for tables with the best view of the Chicago skyline. The sun was setting, turning the buildings into dark shapes against orange and pink fire. It was beautiful in that way expensive things always are, pretty to look at, impossible to touch. I was refilling water glasses at table 12 when I heard Marcus, the host, use his special voice. The one he reserved for people who tipped in hundreds instead of 20s. I glanced toward the entrance and felt something cold slide down my spine. I recognized him immediately. Not because I'd ever served him before, but because I'd seen his face in the financial news, in business magazines, in the background of articles about tech innovation and venture capital. Tall, maybe 6'2", with silver gray hair styled perfectly and a suit that probably cost more than I'd made all month. The kind of white man who'd been told since birth that the world belonged to him, and he'd never had reason to doubt it. Nathan Sterling. Billionaire. Venture capitalist. Owner of Sterling Global Investments. And if my memory was correct, and it always was when it came to legal cases, he was also a man who'd left a trail of financial destruction across 3 continents. He swept into the restaurant like he owned it, which for all I knew, he might have. 2 associates flanked him, younger men in slightly less expensive suits, carrying leather portfolios and wearing the eager expressions of people hoping proximity to power might rub off on them. Behind them came a woman in a red dress that probably cost more than my car, her blonde hair swept up in a way that looked effortless but definitely wasn't. Marcus seated them at table 14. My section. Of course it was my section. I took a breath and reminded myself of the rules I'd been living by for 8 months. Keep your head down. Do your job. Don't engage beyond what's necessary. These people aren't your problem anymore. You left that life behind. But as I approached their table with menus and my practiced smile, I felt something stirring in my chest that I tried very hard to bury. Recognition. Not of Sterling himself, but of the type. The casual arrogance. The assumption that everyone around him existed only to serve his needs. The way he didn't even glance at me as I set down the menus, like I was a piece of furniture that happened to be mobile. Good evening, I said, my voice smooth and professional. My name is Jordan, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with something to drink? Sterling didn't look up. He was scrolling through his phone, his thumb moving in quick, irritated flicks. Bourbon. The 18-year Pappy Van Winkle. Neat. One of his associates jumped in. I'll have the same. Make that 3, the other one added. The woman in red finally looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I recognized. Exhaustion. The kind that comes from smiling when you don't want to, from being decorative when you want to be substantial. Just water for me, please. With lemon. Of course, I said. I'll be right back with those. As I walked away, I heard Sterling's voice carry across the quiet restaurant. He wasn't trying to be loud. Men like him never had to try. Their voices just naturally assumed everyone wanted to hear them. The Shanghai deal is solid. We'll have the contracts signed by Monday. The projections I'm showing are conservative. We're looking at a 300% return in 18 months minimum. I slowed my pace slightly, my ears picking up details I wished they wouldn't. What about the Berlin project? One of the associates asked. Same trajectory. These idiots running family businesses in Europe don't understand scale. They're sitting on gold mines and treating them like lemonade stands. We come in, restructure, liquidate the deadweight, and triple the value. Simple mathematics. I'd heard this script before. Different players, same playbook. Buy struggling companies cheap, strip them for parts, destroy lives and call it restructuring, then sell the pieces for profit. All perfectly legal. All absolutely devastating to the people whose livelihoods got classified as dead weight. In the bar area, I poured 3 bourbons and got a glass of water with lemon. My hands were steady. Years of nursing training had taught me how to keep my body calm even when my mind was racing. I arranged everything on a tray and headed back. That's when everything changed. I don't know if it was the slight unevenness in the floor or if I caught my shoe on nothing at all, but as I approached table 14, I stumbled. Just slightly. Just enough that the water glass tipped, and a few drops, maybe a tablespoon's worth, splashed onto Sterling's sleeve. Time seemed to stop. I recovered immediately, steadying the tray. "I'm so sorry, sir. Let me." "Are you kidding me?" Sterling's voice cut through the restaurant like a knife. He stood up, holding his arm out like I'd doused him in acid instead of a few drops of water. "Do you have any idea how much this suit costs?" "I apologize, sir. I can get a cloth." "A cloth?" His face was reddening now, and everyone in the restaurant had stopped eating to watch. "This is Brioni. This jacket costs $12,000. And you just, with your clumsy, careless." He stopped, looking me up and down with an expression I'd seen too many times in my life. Contempt mixed with dismissal. The look that said I should have known my place. "Let me guess," he continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "You dropped out of high school? Community college maybe, if you even bothered? Figured being a waitress was good enough." The restaurant had gone completely silent. I could feel 50 pairs of eyes on me. The woman in red was staring at her plate. The associates looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Marcus was hurrying over, probably to apologize and offer Sterling a free meal. Something inside me, something I'd kept carefully locked away for 8 months, started to crack. "Sir, again, I apologize for the water. If you'd like. If I'd like." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "What I'd like is for this establishment to hire people with actual competence. People with education. But I suppose that's asking too much, isn't it? You probably can't even count to 20 without taking off your shoes." One of his associates snickered. The sound hit me like a physical thing. And in that moment, standing there in my white button-down shirt and black slacks, being laughed at by men in suits that cost more than I made in 6 months, I made a decision. I was done being invisible. I set the tray down on the nearest table very carefully. Then I looked Nathan Sterling directly in the eyes. "You're absolutely right," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I should be more careful. After all, I wouldn't want to damage that Brioni jacket you mispronounced. It's pronounced Breone, not Briohne. Though I suppose that's an easy mistake for someone who buys expensive things without bothering to learn about them." His mouth opened slightly. Around us, the silence deepened. I wasn't finished. "And you're also correct that I should know my place. Which is why I should probably mention that I graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern University with a dual degree in nursing and law. I'm fluent in 5 languages: English, Mandarin, French, Spanish, and German. And based on what I've overheard from your conversation tonight, I should also mention that I know exactly who you are, Mr. Sterling." I paused, letting that sink in. "I know what you did to Robert Chen and his manufacturing company in San Francisco. I know about the falsified documents, the $12 million you stole through fraudulent projections. I know about Patricia Rodriguez in Miami, whose retirement fund you emptied through a shell company scheme. And I definitely know about the Berlin and Shanghai deals you're currently misrepresenting to your investors here." The color had drained from Sterling's face. "But you're right about one thing," I continued, my voice steady as a heartbeat. "I'm just an uneducated waitress. What could I possibly know?" Then I smiled. Not the practiced professional smile I'd worn for 8 months. A real one. And I waited for the world to catch fire. The silence in the golden terrace stretched like a wire pulled too tight, ready to snap. Nathan Sterling stood frozen, his mouth working but no sound coming out. His associates had gone pale, their eyes darting between him and me like they were watching a tennis match where the ball had suddenly caught fire. I could feel my heart pounding, but my hands were steady. Years of working in emergency rooms had taught me how to function during chaos, how to keep your voice level when everything inside you was screaming. This was just another kind of emergency, except instead of saving a life, I was about to end a career. His career, not mine. Mine was already dead. Had been for 8 months. Sterling finally found his voice, though it came out strangled. You have no idea what you're talking about. Those are baseless accusations, and I could sue you for slander right now. Defamation, I corrected quietly. Slander is spoken, but you'd actually be filing for defamation. And it's only defamation if it's false, which we both know it isn't. Also, truth is an absolute defense in defamation cases, as outlined in New York Times versus Sullivan, though I'm sure your lawyers have explained that to you before. One of the associates let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough. He turned it into a coughing fit. Sterling's face was transitioning from pale to red, a vein pulsing at his temple. Who the hell do you think you are? I told you. I'm Jordan Matthews. I'm 27 years old. I spent 4 years getting my nursing degree because I wanted to help people who were suffering. Then I spent another 3 years in law school because I realized that sometimes the suffering doesn't come from disease, it comes from people like you. People who use the legal system as a weapon instead of a shield. The woman in the red dress was looking at me now, really looking, and I saw something shift in her expression. Recognition, maybe. Or hope. I couldn't tell which. I worked at Henderson and Associates for exactly 11 months, I continued. Small firm, but we took on cases that bigger firms wouldn't touch. Consumer protection. Fraud victims. The kind of people who get crushed by corporate machines and can't afford to fight back. That's how I learned about you, Mr. Sterling. You were one of the names that kept appearing in our case files. Always in the background. Always just careful enough to avoid direct prosecution. This is absurd, Sterling said, but his voice had lost its certainty. He looked at his associates. Get Marcus over here. I want her fired immediately. Marcus was already approaching, his face creased with concern and confusion. Mr. Sterling, I apologize profusely for any. Don't apologize to him, I said, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Not until you hear what I have to say. Marcus stopped, caught between us. The entire restaurant was watching now. Even the kitchen staff had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. I recognized James, one of the line cooks, and Teresa, who worked the salad station. They'd both been kind to me over the past 8 months. Asked how I was doing. Shared their food during breaks. Treated me like a human being instead of a serving mechanism. I owed them the truth, at least. Even if it cost me this job. Robert Chen owned a manufacturing company in San Francisco, I said, my voice carrying across the quiet room. Small operation, family business, been around for 30 years. Made components for medical devices. Good company. Honest people. But they hit some financial trouble during the pandemic, and that's when Sterling Global Investments came in with an offer to help. Except it wasn't help, was it, Mr. Sterling? He said nothing, but his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping. You presented falsified growth projections, I continued. Promised them you'd turn the company around, convinced them to sign over 60% ownership. Then you systematically stripped the assets, sold off the equipment, and dissolved the company. Robert Chen lost everything. His life savings. His father's legacy. $12 million, gone. He tried to sue, but your legal team buried him in paperwork until he couldn't afford to continue. Business is business, Sterling said, but his voice sounded hollow. Sometimes companies fail. That's not fraud, that's capitalism. You're right. Companies do fail. But they usually don't fail because someone deliberately sabotaged them from the inside. Patricia Rodriguez in Miami, 63-year-old woman, worked as a teacher her entire life. She invested her retirement fund with one of your subsidiaries based on projections your team created. Projections that turned out to be completely fabricated. She lost $400,000. Everything she'd saved for 30 years. She's working at a grocery store now, bagging groceries at 65 because she can't afford to retire. The woman in red put her hand over her mouth. One of the associates was staring at Sterling like he'd never seen him before. These are cherry-picked stories, Sterling said, but he was sweating now. Isolated incidents. Every investment carries risk. Everyone knows that. True, I agreed. But investors are supposed to make decisions based on accurate information, not falsified projections and hidden liabilities. Which brings me to the Shanghai deal you were just discussing. The one with the 300% return projection. Sterling's eyes narrowed. You have no information about that deal. That's proprietary, confidential. The Huang family textile business, I said. Been operating in Shanghai for 4 generations. You're promising these gentlemen, I gestured to his associates, that you'll triple their investment by restructuring and modernizing the operation. What you're not telling them is that your restructuring plan involves closing the factory, laying off 800 workers, and selling the land to a development company. A development company that you own 30% of through a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. One of the associates stood up abruptly. Nathan, is this true? Sterling spun on him. Sit down, Harrison. This woman is a disgruntled employee making things up to. I don't work for you, I interrupted. I never have. I'm just someone who pays attention. Someone who remembers. And someone who speaks multiple languages, which means I can read financial documents filed in Chinese, German, and Spanish that most people ignore because they assume anything important would be in English. I turned to the associate named Harrison. Do you want to see the documents? His eyes widened. He didn't speak Mandarin, but he understood what I'd just offered. Sterling lunged forward, his hand raised like he might actually strike me. You little. Finish that sentence, I said softly. Please. Do it in front of all these witnesses. Give me one more reason. He stopped, his hand trembling in the air between us. Around the restaurant, several people had their phones out now, recording. In the age of social media, violence had witnesses. Consequences. Sterling lowered his hand slowly. When he spoke, his voice was quiet and cold. You have no idea what you've just done. I will destroy you. I will sue you for every penny you'll ever make. I will make sure you never work anywhere in this city again. Do you understand me? I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something inside me finally, completely break free. Mr. Sterling, I said, I stopped caring about what men like you could do to me a long time ago. But your investors here, they should probably care about what the Securities and Exchange Commission is going to do to you. Because about 45 minutes ago, before you even walked in here, they launched a formal investigation into Sterling Global Investments. I know because I'm the one who gave them the documents. His face went white. So yes, I said. I understand exactly what I've just done. Then I untied my apron, set it on the table, and walked toward the kitchen. Behind me, chaos erupted. I made it exactly 3 steps past the kitchen doors before my knees started shaking. Teresa grabbed my arm, steadying me against the stainless steel prep counter. Her dark eyes were huge, searching my face like she was looking for signs of injury. Jordan, what the hell just happened out there? I quit, I said, and then started laughing. Not the polite, controlled laugh I'd perfected over 8 months of service. This was something wild and unhinged, bubbling up from a place I'd kept locked down for so long I'd forgotten it existed. James handed me a glass of water. Girl, you didn't just quit. You dropped a bomb on that man's entire life. Who is he? Nobody important, I said, and took a drink. The water was cold, grounding. Just another rich guy who thought he could treat people like garbage and never face consequences. Through the circular window in the kitchen door, I could see the chaos in the dining room. Sterling was on his phone, barking orders at someone. His associates were huddled together, scrolling frantically through their own phones, probably trying to verify everything I'd said. The woman in red was still sitting at the table, watching the scene unfold with an expression I couldn't quite read. Marcus burst through the kitchen doors, his face flushed. For a moment I thought he was going to yell at me, fire me formally, maybe even threaten legal action. Instead, he did something I didn't expect. He smiled. That, he said, slightly out of breath, was the most extraordinary thing I've seen in 15 years of restaurant management. I blinked. You're not firing me? Firing you? Jordan, half the restaurant is applauding. Do you know how many wealthy assholes come through here and treat my staff like dirt? And we just have to smile and take it because they tip well and management wants their money. He shook his head. I've wanted to say something to men like Sterling for years. You just did it for all of us. Teresa squeezed my shoulder. He threatened to hit you. We all saw it. I know, I said quietly. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion. I know he did. There are at least 20 people out there who recorded the whole thing on their phones, James added. By tomorrow morning, this is going to be everywhere. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt oddly calm, like I'd been holding my breath for 8 months and finally, I could exhale. Marcus pulled out his phone. I need to call the owner. He's going to want to know about this before it hits social media. He paused, looking at me seriously. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I'm fine, I said. Better than fine, actually. He nodded and stepped away to make his call. Teresa and James stayed close, a protective barrier between me and the chaos beyond the kitchen doors. So you really have a law degree? Teresa asked. And you speak 5 languages? Yeah. Why the hell are you working here? It was the question I'd been asking myself for 8 months. The question I'd avoided answering every time it surfaced in my mind at 3 in the morning when I couldn't sleep. Because I was tired, I said finally. Tired of fighting battles I couldn't win. Tired of watching the system protect people with money while crushing everyone else. I thought if I just disappeared, stopped trying to fix things, maybe I'd find some kind of peace. Did you? James asked. I thought about it. Thought about the past 8 months of keeping my head down, serving food, collecting tips, going home to my empty apartment and pretending I was satisfied with invisibility. No, I admitted. I was just hiding. There's a difference. The kitchen door swung open again, and the woman in the red dress stepped through. Up close, she was younger than I'd first thought, maybe 35, with tired eyes and expensive makeup that couldn't quite hide the stress lines around her mouth. Excuse me, she said, her voice soft but steady. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I needed to speak with you before I left. Teresa and James exchanged glances but didn't move away. Protective. It's okay, I told them. Then to the woman, what can I do for you? She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card holder, extracting a cream-colored card with embossed lettering. My name is Catherine Wells. I'm an attorney with Morrison & Price. We're a corporate litigation firm downtown. I took the card. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind that announced its own importance. I've been Nathan Sterling's legal counsel for 3 years, Catherine continued. Or I was, until about 5 minutes ago when I resigned. I called my managing partner from the bathroom and told him I'm done representing Sterling Global Investments. My hand tightened on the card. Why? Because everything you said out there is true. I've known it for months, maybe longer. I've been complicit in covering up fraud, in burying evidence, in destroying people's lives so men like Nathan Sterling could get richer. Her voice cracked slightly. I told myself I was just doing my job, that I was following orders, that if I didn't do it, someone else would. But hearing you say all of that out loud, watching you risk everything to tell the truth. She stopped, taking a shaky breath. I can't be that person anymore. She reached into her purse again and pulled out a flash drive. This contains copies of documents from every case you mentioned. Robert Chen, Patricia Rodriguez, the Shanghai deal, the Berlin project. Everything. I've already sent copies to the SEC, but I want you to have them too. I stared at the flash drive like it might explode. Why are you giving this to me? Catherine's smile was sad. Because you're the only person in that room who had the courage to speak up. And because I think you'll know what to do with it better than I ever did. She paused. There's something else. Inside that flash drive is contact information for 12 other victims. People Sterling has destroyed over the past 5 years. People who tried to fight back but couldn't afford to keep going. They deserve justice. They deserve someone who'll fight for them. She pressed the flash drive into my palm and closed my fingers around it. Thank you, she said quietly, for reminding me what integrity looks like. Then she turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there holding evidence that could bring down an empire. Teresa whistled low. Jordan, what are you going to do? I looked at the flash drive, feeling its weight. Such a small thing. Such enormous consequences. I don't know, I said honestly. But I'm about to find out. By the time I left the Golden Terrace that night, the video had already gone viral. I didn't know it yet. I was too busy sitting in Marcus's office, giving a statement to the restaurant's lawyer, a nervous young guy named Peter who kept adjusting his glasses and asking me to repeat everything I'd said to Sterling. He recorded the whole conversation on his laptop, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he took notes. And you're absolutely certain about the SEC investigation? Peter asked for the third time. Yes. I filed the complaint 6 weeks ago with documentation. They contacted me 2 weeks later to confirm they were opening a formal investigation. The timing of him coming in here tonight was just coincidence. Peter leaned back in his chair. That's not coincidence. That's fate. He saved his document and closed the laptop. For what it's worth, I don't think Sterling has any legal ground to stand on regarding you. Everything you said was either demonstrable fact or protected opinion. And given that he threatened physical violence in front of multiple witnesses, any lawsuit he files would be laughed out of court. Good to know, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed him. Men like Sterling had ways of making problems disappear, legal ground or not. Marcus walked me out through the back exit to avoid the handful of customers who'd lingered in the dining room, hoping to talk to me. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the smell of the city, exhaust fumes, restaurant grease, Lake Michigan's water somewhere in the distance. Take tomorrow off, Marcus said. Paid. Hell, take the rest of the week if you need it. This kind of thing doesn't happen every day. Am I still employed? I asked. He laughed. Jordan, after tonight, you could probably buy this restaurant. But yes, you're still employed. Assuming you want to be. I didn't know if I did. The idea of going back to serving tables after what had just happened felt surreal, like trying to step back into a costume that no longer fit. I'll think about it, I said. Fair enough. He hesitated, then added, what you did tonight took guts. Real guts. I hope you know that. I nodded, not trusting my voice, and headed for the L station. It wasn't until I was on the train, swaying with emotion as it clattered through the city, that I pulled out my phone and saw the notifications. Hundreds of them. My phone kept buzzing, the screen lighting up with alerts faster than I could read them. Text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Friend requests on social media from strangers. Email after email flooding my inbox. And links. So many links to videos, articles, tweets. I clicked on one of the videos with shaking hands. The footage was shaky but clear enough. Someone had been recording from a nearby table, probably started filming when Sterling first stood up and yelled about his jacket. The video captured everything. His cruel words about education. My response about my degrees and languages. The moment I mentioned Robert Chen and Patricia Rodriguez. Sterling's threat of violence. The video had been posted 2 hours ago. It already had 3 million views. The comments section was exploding. Thousands of people weighing in, most of them supporting me, some calling me a hero, others debating the ethics of confronting customers. A few defenders of Sterling, claiming I was lying or that I deliberately spilled water on him. But they were drowned out by the majority. She destroyed him with facts. This is what happens when you underestimate someone based on their job. That man threatened to hit her and nobody stepped in. This is disgusting. Anyone know who she is? Someone give this woman a job. I scrolled through more notifications and found one that made my heart stop. An email from a name I recognized immediately. Diane Chen. Robert Chen's daughter. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Ms. Matthews. I don't know if you remember me. We spoke briefly when my father was trying to file his lawsuit against Sterling Global Investments. You were working at Henderson and Associates at the time, and you helped us understand the legal options we had. Or didn't have, as it turned out. My father died 8 months ago. The stress of losing everything, of watching his life's work dissolve, of feeling powerless against Sterling's lawyers, it was too much for his heart. He had a massive heart attack in his sleep. He was 62 years old. I've spent the past 8 months trying to figure out how to hold Nathan Sterling accountable. Trying to find someone who would listen, who would care. The legal system failed us. The media wasn't interested. Everyone told me to move on, to accept that sometimes bad people win. And then tonight, someone sent me a video of you confronting Sterling in a restaurant. I've watched it 12 times. I've cried through every single viewing. Thank you. Thank you for seeing my father as more than a statistic. Thank you for remembering his name. Thank you for speaking up when nobody else would. If there's anything I can do to help with the SEC investigation, please let me know. I have documents, emails, everything my father saved before he died. I want to make sure Sterling never does this to another family. With deepest gratitude, Diane Chen. I read the email 3 times, tears blurring the words. Robert Chen was dead. I'd known Sterling had destroyed his business, but I hadn't known he'd destroyed the man himself. 62 years old. Gone because a billionaire wanted a bigger profit margin. The train lurched to a stop at my station. I got off automatically, my body moving while my mind stayed trapped in that email. Diane's words echoed in my head as I climbed the stairs to street level, as I walked the 4 blocks to my apartment building, as I unlocked my door and stepped into the small studio that had been my hiding place for 8 months. I set my purse on the counter, pulled out the flash drive Catherine Wells had given me, stared at it under the harsh fluorescent light of my kitchen. 12 victims. 12 families like the Chens. 12 people who'd been crushed under Sterling's ambition and left with nothing but debt and grief. I thought about Diane's father dying of a heart attack. About Patricia Rodriguez bagging groceries at 65. About the Huang family in Shanghai, about to lose 4 generations of history so Sterling could flip a property deal. I thought about the person I used to be. The one who went to law school because she believed in justice. The one who thought education and determination could change the world. Then I thought about the person I'd become. The one who hid in plain sight, who served food and kept quiet, who convinced herself that giving up was the same as finding peace. Both versions of me were standing in this kitchen. But only one of them could move forward. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. It was time to stop hiding. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my tiny kitchen table with my laptop open, going through every file on Catherine Wells's flash drive. The documents were organized meticulously. She might have been complicit, but she was thorough. Each victim had their own folder containing contracts, email chains, financial statements, and legal correspondence. Robert Chen's folder made my chest tight. I could see the progression of his destruction in black and white. The initial investment agreement, promising Sterling Global would modernize his manufacturing operation. The quarterly reports showing steady decline despite Sterling's reassurances. The asset liquidation notices. The final bankruptcy filing. There were emails, too. Robert writing to Sterling's office, pleading for more time, asking for an explanation. The responses were cold, clinical. Market conditions. Necessary restructuring. Fiduciary responsibility to our investors. Corporate speak for, we're taking everything and there's nothing you can do about it. Patricia Rodriguez's folder was worse. She'd sent handwritten letters, scanned and filed away. Her handwriting was shaky in the later ones, desperation bleeding through every word. She believed the investment advisor who worked for Sterling's subsidiary. Believed the projections. Believed that her retirement was safe. I found myself reading one letter out loud in the empty apartment, my voice cracking. Please, I taught third grade for 30 years. I gave everything I had to those children. This money was supposed to help me live with dignity. I don't understand what happened. Please help me understand what happened. Nobody had responded to that letter. By 3 a.m, I'd gone through 8 of the 12 folders. 8 families destroyed. 8 lives derailed. And these were just the ones Catherine had documented. How many more were there? How many people had Sterling crushed who never even made it into a file? My phone buzzed. Another notification. I'd put it on silent hours ago, but the screen kept lighting up like a strobe, casting shadows across my kitchen wall. I finally picked it up and scrolled through the messages. Most were from strangers. Words of support, requests for interviews, a few marriage proposals from people who apparently found confronting billionaires attractive. But one message stood out. It was from a number I didn't recognize, sent 20 minutes ago. Is this Jordan Matthews from the video? My name is Dr. Lisa Okafor. I run the Community Health Center on the South Side. I saw what you did tonight. We need nurses with your training and your backbone. If you're interested in talking about a position, call me. Anytime. I mean that. Anytime. A phone number followed. I stared at the message for a long time. The Community Health Center. I knew the place. It served one of the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago, providing care to people who couldn't afford insurance, who worked 3 jobs and still couldn't make ends meet. The kind of place I'd dreamed of working when I first got my nursing degree. Before the world taught me that dreams were expensive luxuries. Another message came through. This one from an email address connected to Morrison and Price, the law firm Catherine had mentioned. Ms. Matthews, my name is Richard Morrison, managing partner at Morrison and Price. Catherine Wells informed me of her resignation tonight and explained the circumstances. I've reviewed the situation and I'm disgusted by what's been happening under my firm's representation. I'd like to discuss the possibility of you joining our litigation team. We need people who understand what justice actually means. Please call me at your earliest convenience. I set the phone down and laughed. Not the wild, unhinged laugh from earlier. This was smaller, more brittle. 8 months ago, I would have killed for an opportunity like this. A position at a major firm, a chance to practice law at the highest level. Now it felt surreal, like winning a lottery ticket after you'd already lost your house. My laptop chimed. An email notification. I almost ignored it, but something made me check. It was from the Securities and Exchange Commission. From Agent Rebecca Foster, the woman I'd been working with on the Sterling investigation. Ms. Matthews, I'm sure you're aware by now that your confrontation with Nathan Sterling has become public. I want you to know that this doesn't compromise our investigation. If anything, it strengthens it. We've had our phones ringing all evening with tips, witnesses, and additional victims coming forward. People who were too afraid to speak up before are suddenly finding their courage. You did that. You gave them permission to be seen. I'm calling an emergency meeting tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to discuss next steps. I'd like you to be there. We're going to need your testimony, your legal expertise, and frankly, your ability to translate some of the foreign documents we've acquired. This case is bigger than we initially thought, and it's moving fast. Can you make it? Agent Rebecca Foster, Securities and Exchange Commission. I looked around my apartment. The cracked tile in the bathroom. The window that didn't quite close all the way, letting in cold air and street noise. The futon that served as both couch and bed. This had been my refuge, my hiding place, the spot where I'd convinced myself that small and safe was better than ambitious and vulnerable. But sitting here in the dark, surrounded by evidence of Sterling's destruction, reading messages from people who wanted to help, from victims who needed someone to fight for them, I realized something. I'd been wrong. Safety wasn't peace. It was just another kind of prison, and I'd locked myself inside it willingly, thrown away the key, and called it healing. What would you do if you discovered you'd been hiding from your purpose instead of resting from your pain? Would you stay safe, or would you step back into the fire? I opened a new email and started typing. Agent Foster. I'll be there at 9 a.m. And I'm bringing everything I have. Jordan Matthews. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I opened a new browser tab and searched for the Community Health Center's website. Dr. Okafor's direct line was listed under the staff directory. I stared at the number, my finger hovering over my phone screen. It was 3:30 in the morning. Normal people were asleep. But Dr. Okafor had said any time. I called. She answered on the second ring, her voice alert and warm. This is Dr. Okafor. Hi, I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. This is Jordan Matthews. You sent me a message about a nursing position? Jordan. I could hear the smile in her voice. Thank you for calling. Listen, I know it's late, and I know you've had one hell of a night. But I meant what I said. We need you. Not just because you're qualified. We need people who remember why they got into healthcare in the first place. People who give a damn. I'm not sure I do anymore, I admitted. Give a damn, I mean. I thought I did, but then I spent 8 months serving overpriced food and pretending I was okay with it. And tonight you confronted a billionaire in front of 50 people and potentially saved dozens of families from financial ruin, Dr. Okafor said gently. That sounds like someone who gives a damn to me. Maybe you were just tired. There's a difference between tired and broken, Jordan. Tired people can rest and come back stronger. I felt something crack open in my chest, something that had been sealed tight for months. Can I come see the clinic? I asked. Maybe tomorrow afternoon, after my meeting with the SEC? You can come whenever you want. The door's always open. We said goodbye, and I sat there in my kitchen as the first light of dawn started bleeding through the window, turning the sky from black to gray to pale orange. Tired wasn't the same as broken. Maybe I'd just been resting. And maybe it was time to wake up. The SEC office was nothing like I expected. I'd imagined some imposing government building with metal detectors and stern-faced security guards. Instead, Agent Rebecca Foster met me in the lobby of a nondescript office tower downtown, her FBI badge clipped to the pocket of her blazer. She was maybe 45, with short natural hair and the kind of direct gaze that said she'd heard every lie in the book and wouldn't tolerate a single one. Ms. Matthews, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for coming. Jordan, please. Rebecca. Her handshake was firm. Coffee. God, yes. She led me to a conference room on the 14th floor where two other agents were already waiting, both men in rumpled suits with the exhausted expressions of people who'd been working through the night. The table was covered in file folders, laptop computers, and empty coffee cups. "This is Agent David Park and Agent Marcus Webb," Rebecca said. "Gentlemen, this is Jordan Matthews." Agent Park looked up from his laptop, and I saw recognition flash across his face. "You're the woman from the video."
That would be me.
"My wife made me watch it 4 times last night," he said, a slight smile tugging at his mouth. "She's a teacher. She said it was the most satisfying thing she'd seen all year." Agent Webb gestured to a chair. "Please, sit. We have a lot to cover." I sat, setting my bag on the floor. Inside it was the flash drive from Catherine Wells, along with my own notes from the past 6 weeks of research. Everything I'd compiled before filing my initial complaint. Rebecca poured coffee into a styrofoam cup and slid it across to me. "First things first, are you okay? That confrontation last night was intense, and Sterling made a physical threat against you in front of multiple witnesses."
"I'm fine," I said.
"Honestly, I've had worse said to me in emergency rooms at 2 in the morning.
At least Sterling was sober."
Agent Webb leaned forward. "We need to talk about what happens next. Your video has been viewed over 8 million times as of this morning. Sterling's lawyers have already issued a statement claiming you fabricated everything, that you're a disgruntled former employee seeking attention."
"I never worked for him." "We know."
"But that's the narrative they're pushing. They're also threatening to sue you for defamation, tortious interference with business relationships, and about 6 other things their legal team dreamed up overnight." I took a sip of coffee. It was terrible, burnt and bitter, but I needed the caffeine. "Let them sue. Everything I said is documented and true." Rebecca opened a file folder and pulled out several printed pages. "That's what we need to establish formally. Walk us through how you first became aware of Nathan Sterling's activities." So I did. I told him about my time at Henderson and Associates, about the pattern of cases that kept circling back to Sterling Global Investments, about the small firm's inability to compete with Sterling's legal resources, about Robert Chen specifically, and how watching that case collapse had been one of the final straws that pushed me out of law entirely. "Robert Chen died 8 months ago," I added quietly. "Heart attack. His daughter contacted me last night after she saw the video." The 3 agents exchanged glances. Agent Park made a note on his laptop. "We didn't know he'd passed," Rebecca said softly.
"I'm sorry."
"His daughter has documentation. Everything her father saved. She wants to help with the investigation. We'll reach out to her." Rebecca slid another document across the table. "What about Patricia Rodriguez?"
"You mentioned her last night as well."
"Retirement fraud. One of Sterling's subsidiary companies, investment advisors who targeted elderly clients with promises of guaranteed returns. The projections they showed her were completely fabricated." I pulled out my own file folder and extracted copies of the documents I'd gathered. "Here. Contract, initial projections, actual performance, and the company's internal emails showing they knew the projections were false when they made them." Agent Webb took the documents, scanning through them quickly. His jaw tightened. "This is damning."
"It gets worse."
I pulled out the flash drive Catherine Wells had given me. "Last night, Sterling's attorney resigned and gave me this. It contains detailed documentation on 12 separate fraud cases spanning 5 years. Shell companies, falsified projections, asset stripping, blackmail.
Everything."
Rebecca took the flash drive like it was made of gold. "Catherine Wells gave you this?" "She said she couldn't be complicit anymore. Said she'd already sent copies to you, but wanted me to have them too." "We received her files at 11 p.m. last night," Agent Park confirmed. We've been going through them ever since. If even half of this holds up in court, Sterling's looking at 20 years minimum.
It'll hold up, I said. Catherine was thorough. She documented everything.
Rebecca plugged the flash drive into her laptop and pulled up the files. For several minutes, the only sound in the room was clicking keyboards and the occasional muttered curse from one of the agents as they discovered new evidence. Finally, Rebecca sat back and looked at me. Jordan, I'm going to be straight with you. This case is going to get ugly. Sterling has resources, connections, and a legal team that specializes in destroying people who threaten him. They're going to come after you hard. They'll dig into your past, try to discredit you, make your life hell in every way they legally can.
I know. Do you?
Agent Webb's voice was gentle but firm. Because we've seen this before. Whistleblowers who start out confident and then crumble under the pressure. The constant legal threats, the media attention, the feeling like you're fighting an impossible battle. It takes a toll. I thought about the past 8 months. About hiding from the world because I'd been too tired to keep fighting. About watching people suffer because men with money could buy their way out of consequences. I thought about Robert Chen dying at 62. About Patricia Rodriguez bagging groceries instead of enjoying retirement. About the Huang family in Shanghai, about to lose everything their ancestors built. I've already spent 8 months crumbling, I said. I'm done with that. Sterling threatened to destroy me last night, and you know what I realized? I'm already destroyed. I destroyed myself by giving up, by hiding, by convincing myself that staying small was safer than standing tall. I met Rebecca's eyes. He can't take anything from me that I haven't already lost. But maybe I can help stop him from taking everything from other people. Rebecca smiled. It was small but genuine. Okay then. Let's take down a billionaire. Agent Park turned his laptop around to show me a spreadsheet. We're building a timeline of Sterling's fraudulent activities. Based on what we have so far, we can establish a pattern going back at least 7 years. But we need testimony from the victims. Many of them signed non-disclosure agreements as part of settlement negotiations. They're afraid to come forward. What if they heard from someone who already did? I asked. Someone who faced Sterling publicly and survived? Rebecca raised an eyebrow. You want to contact them directly? Diane Chin already reached out to me. If she's willing to talk, maybe others will be too. Especially if they know they're not alone. That could work, Agent Webb said slowly. Though it puts you in an even more visible position. Good, I said. Let Sterling see me coming. Maybe he'll make a mistake. Rebecca closed her laptop and stood. Welcome to the team, Jordan. Something tells me Sterling has no idea what he started when he called you uneducated. I smiled, feeling something fierce and bright burning in my chest. No, I agreed. He really doesn't. The community health center was located in Englewood, tucked between a laundromat and a corner store with bars on the windows. The building itself was old brick, probably from the 1950s, with a hand-painted sign that had faded in the Chicago sun. But the waiting room inside was clean and bright, walls covered in children's artwork and health education posters in English and Spanish. It was packed. Every chair was full. Mothers with crying babies, elderly men with canes, teenagers who looked like they'd come straight from school. A young woman behind the reception desk was juggling 3 phone calls while trying to check in a patient, her voice calm despite the chaos. Dr. Lisa Okafor emerged from a hallway, a stethoscope around her neck and exhaustion written across her face. She was tall, maybe 6 feet, with locks pulled back in a ponytail and the kind of presence that made you stand straighter without knowing why. When she saw me, her whole face lit up. Jordan, you came. She navigated through the crowded waiting room to shake my hand. Thank you. I know you've had an insane 24 hours. It's been a week, I agreed. Come on back. Let me show you around before the afternoon rush really hits. She led me through a maze of examination rooms, each one small but well-equipped. We passed nurses taking vitals, a doctor explaining medication instructions to an elderly patient in Spanish, a medical assistant restocking supplies. Everyone looked tired but focused, moving with the efficient grace of people who'd learned to do more with less. We serve about 300 patients a day, Lisa explained as we walked. Most of them are uninsured or underinsured. We operate on grants, donations, and whatever we can bill to Medicaid. It's never enough, but we make it work. She opened a door to a break room where two nurses sat eating lunch from Tupperware containers. They looked up, and I saw the recognition in their eyes. This is Jordan Matthews, Lisa said. Jordan, meet Keisha and Maria. They're the backbone of this place. Keisha, a woman about my age with box braids and kind eyes, grinned. Girl, I saw that video. You made my whole week. Made mine too, apparently, I said. Maria laughed. Dr. Okafor hasn't stopped talking about recruiting you since last night. She even called at midnight to make sure we had space in the schedule for a new nurse. I'm persistent, Lisa said unapologetically. Especially when I find people worth persisting about. Come on, let me show you the real reason I wanted you here. We left the break room and headed upstairs to a floor that looked half-finished. Drop cloths covered the ground, painting supplies sat in corners, but I could see the potential. More examination rooms, a larger waiting area, space for expansion. This is our dream, Lisa said, gesturing around. We got a grant 6 months ago to expand our services. Mental health counseling, dental care, addiction recovery support. Everything our community needs but can't access anywhere else. But the grant doesn't cover staffing, and we can't find qualified people willing to work for what we can pay. She turned to face me, her expression serious. Jordan, I watched that video about 20 times. I saw someone who remembers why healthcare matters. Someone who won't look away from injustice just because it's uncomfortable. That's who I need here. Not just a nurse with credentials. We need someone who gives a damn about the people sitting in that waiting room downstairs. I looked around the unfinished space, imagining it full of patients, full of hope. What happened to make you give a damn? I asked quietly. Lisa leaned against the wall, arms crossed. My little brother. Jerome. He had asthma, real bad. When he was 16, he had an attack at school. The nurse called 911, but the ambulance took 40 minutes to get to our neighborhood. 40 minutes. You know how long it takes to die from an asthma attack without treatment. I knew. I'd seen it in emergency rooms. I'm sorry. The hospital was only 10 minutes away, but they had to come from across the city because the local ambulance service had been defunded. Budget cuts, they said. Not enough resources for poor neighborhoods, they said. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. Jerome died because someone decided his life wasn't worth the cost of proper emergency services. He was 16 years old, Jordan. He wanted to be an engineer. We stood there in silence, two women carrying the weight of losses that shouldn't have happened. I went to medical school because of Jerome, Lisa continued. Came back to this neighborhood because of Jerome. Built this clinic because no 16-year-old should die from an asthma attack because they're poor and black and living in the wrong zip code. She looked at me directly. Why did you go to nursing school? Before law school, before everything else, why nursing? I thought back to the girl I'd been at 18, full of idealism and determination. My grandmother. She had diabetes, needed insulin, but couldn't afford it even with insurance. She started rationing it, cutting doses to make it last longer. By the time we realized what was happening, she'd gone into diabetic ketoacidosis. She died 3 days later in the ICU. I swallowed hard. I held her hand while she died, and I remember thinking that this was wrong. That in one of the richest countries in the world, Nobody should die because they can't afford medicine. I wanted to fix that.
And did you? No.
I learned you can't fix a broken system by working within it. The system protects itself. Protects people like Nathan Sterling who profit from other people's suffering. Lisa nodded slowly. So what changed last night? Why confront him after 8 months of hiding? I thought about the question. About the moment I'd set down that water pitcher and decided to stop being invisible. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story and you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Your support helps us grow and brings you more amazing stories just like this. Now, let's get back to it. I got tired of being complicit in my own erasure, I said finally. Sterling called me uneducated, but the truth is I'd educated myself right out of believing I mattered. I convinced myself that staying silent was self-preservation. But it wasn't.
It was just cowardice dressed up as wisdom. And now
I'm tired of watching people suffer because I'm too scared to fight. I looked around the unfinished floor, then back at Lisa. When would you need me to start? Her smile was brilliant. Is tomorrow too soon? I laughed, surprised by how good it felt. Tomorrow I'm meeting with more SEC agents and probably fielding calls from Sterling's lawyers. How about Monday? Monday works. Lisa extended her hand. Welcome to the team, Jordan. Fair warning, the pay is terrible, the hours are long, and we're always short on supplies. But the work matters. These people matter. And I think you've remembered that. I shook her hand, feeling something settle into place inside my chest. Something that had been missing for 8 months. I think I have too, I said. As we headed back downstairs, my phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca Foster. Sterling's lawyers just filed a restraining order against you, claiming harassment and threatening behavior. Court hearing tomorrow at 2 p.m. Don't worry, we've got your back. Bring everything. I showed the text to Lisa. She read it and shook her head.
Man's really trying to silence you.
Yeah, I said, sliding my phone back into my pocket. That's not going to work. Lisa grinned.
No, I don't think it is.
The courtroom was smaller than I expected, just a regular hearing room with fluorescent lights and cheap wood paneling. But it was packed. Sterling's legal team had brought 4 lawyers, all in matching navy suits like they were going to a funeral.
Sterling himself sat at their table, his expression carefully neutral, though I caught the flash of rage in his eyes when I walked in.
Rebecca Foster sat on my side of the room, along with a lawyer from the SEC named Thomas Brennan. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the calm demeanor of someone who'd won more cases than he'd lost. Don't worry, he'd told me in the hallway before we entered. This is theater. Sterling's trying to intimidate you and control the narrative. The restraining order won't hold. He has no legal basis. But we need to show the judge that you're credible, calm, and not a threat.
Easy for him to say.
He wasn't the one who'd spent the morning fielding death threats on social media from Sterling supporters, or reading articles calling me everything from a hero to a fame-hungry liar. The judge entered, and we all stood. Judge Patricia Morrison was a black woman in her 50s, with reading glasses perched on her nose and an expression that suggested she'd heard every ridiculous argument imaginable and had patience for none of them.
Be seated, she said, settling into her chair.
I've reviewed the petition for a temporary restraining order filed by Mr. Nathan Sterling against Ms. Jordan Matthews. Mr. Sterling is represented by counsel from Davies and Hartman. Ms. Matthews, I see you're accompanied by representation from the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Interesting.
Sterling's lead attorney, a man named Richard Davies who probably charged $1,000 an hour, stood up. Your Honor, thank you for hearing this matter on such short notice. My client has been subjected to a vicious and unprovoked attack on his character and business reputation. Ms. Matthews confronted him in a public restaurant, made false and defamatory statements about his business practices, and caused significant harm to his professional relationships and personal safety. Personal safety? Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. I've seen the video, Mr. Davies. Your client is the one who made a threatening gesture toward Ms. Matthews, not the other way around. Davies didn't miss a beat. My client was reacting to extreme provocation, Your Honor. Ms. Matthews deliberately sought him out, spilled water on his clothing, and then launched into a planned attack designed to humiliate him and interfere with an active business negotiation. Since then, my client has received numerous threats from members of the public who were incited by Ms. Matthews' statements. He fears for his safety and his livelihood. I felt my jaw clench. The audacity of it. Sterling threatening me in front of 50 witnesses, and now he was playing the victim. Thomas Brennan stood, buttoning his jacket. Your Honor, may I respond? Please do, Mr. Brennan. And make it good, because I'm not inclined to grant restraining orders based on viral videos and hurt feelings. A few people in the gallery snickered. Sterling's face darkened. Your Honor, Ms. Matthews is a cooperating witness in an active federal investigation into Mr. Sterling's business practices. The statements she made in the restaurant were based on documented evidence that my office has been reviewing for the past 6 weeks. Far from being false or defamatory, her statements were substantially true and are currently the subject of formal SEC inquiry. He pulled out a file folder and approached the bench. I've provided the court with a summary of our investigation, along with documentation supporting Ms. Matthews' claims. We have evidence of securities fraud, falsified financial projections, and a pattern of predatory business practices spanning multiple years. Ms. Matthews didn't seek Mr. Sterling out. He happened to be seated in her section of the restaurant where she works. Her response to his verbal abuse was protected speech regarding matters of public concern. Judge Morrison took the folder and flipped through it, her expression unreadable. The courtroom was silent except for the rustling of papers. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Davies, your client called Ms. Matthews uneducated and worthless in a public venue after she accidentally spilled water on him. Is that accurate? Davies shifted his weight. Your Honor, my client was understandably upset about damage to an expensive suit. That's a yes or no question, Counselor. Yes, Your Honor, but context. And then he made a threatening gesture toward her, which was captured on video and witnessed by dozens of people? My client denies that the gesture was threatening. I've seen the video, Mr. Davies. I have eyes. Judge Morrison set the folder down and removed her glasses. Here's what I see. I see a wealthy man who verbally abused a service worker, made classist and demeaning comments about her education and worth, and then got angry when she responded with facts. I see a man who doesn't like being held accountable, so he's using the legal system to silence someone who spoke truth to power. Sterling leaned forward and whispered urgently to Davies. Davies held up a hand, signaling him to be quiet. Your Honor, Davies tried again. The issue isn't what my client said, but what Ms. Matthews did in response. She interfered with active business negotiations, caused his investors to withdraw from a deal, and she exercised her First Amendment right to speak about matters of public concern, Judge Morrison interrupted. If Mr. Sterling's business deals fell apart because someone told the truth about his practices, that's a business problem, not a legal one. Petition for restraining order denied. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Sterling shot to his feet. This is absurd. She destroyed my reputation, cost me millions. Mr. Sterling, Judge Morrison's voice cut through his protest like a blade. I suggest you sit down before I hold you in contempt. And I further suggest that if you're concerned about your reputation, you might want to examine the behavior that led to it being questioned in the first place. She turned to me. Ms. Matthews, you're free to go about your life without restriction. However, I'm going to give you the same advice I'd give anyone in your position. Be careful. The court of public opinion is fickle, and people with resources can make life difficult in ways that don't require legal justification. Watch your back. Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. As we filed out of the courtroom, I could feel Sterling's eyes burning into my back. Rebecca touched my elbow gently, steering me toward the exit. That went better than expected, Thomas said once we were in the hallway. Judge Morrison is tough but fair. Sterling's team knew it was a long shot, but they wanted to rattle you. Did it work? Rebecca asked me. I thought about it. About sitting in that courtroom listening to expensive lawyers try to paint me as the villain. About Sterling's rage barely contained beneath his expensive suit. About Judge Morrison's words, "Watch your back."
No, I said finally.
It just made me angrier. Thomas smiled. Good. We're going to need that anger. Sterling's not going to stop coming after you, Jordan. Men like him don't know how to lose gracefully. Then it's lucky I'm not planning to let him win. We pushed through the courthouse doors into the afternoon sunlight. A crowd had gathered on the steps, reporters with cameras, supporters holding signs that said things like, "Justice for Jordan," and "Billionaires aren't above the law," and a handful of protesters with signs defending Sterling. Someone shouted my name. Cameras flashed. Rebecca moved closer, protective. "You don't have to say anything," she murmured. But I found myself walking toward the microphones anyway, toward the questions being shouted from a dozen directions. Thomas and Rebecca flanked me, but they didn't stop me. A reporter thrust a microphone in my face. "Ms. Matthews, how do you feel about the judge's ruling?" I looked directly into the camera, thinking about Robert Chen and Patricia Rodriguez and all the other names in Catherine Wells's files. All the people who'd been silenced. "I feel like the truth matters," I said clearly. "And I'm just getting started." 3 months later, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in my apartment, adjusting the collar of a navy blazer I'd bought specifically for today. My hands were steady, but my heart was racing. In 2 hours, I would testify before a federal grand jury about Nathan Sterling's fraud operations. In 4 hours, the SEC would announce formal charges. Everything had led to this moment. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Lisa Okafor. "Good luck today. We're all rooting for you. Remember, you're not alone in this." I smiled. The past 3 months working at the community health center had reminded me what it felt like to help people, to use my skills for something that mattered. Every shift left me exhausted but fulfilled in a way serving overpriced meals never had. The patients didn't care about my viral video or my confrontation with a billionaire. They just needed someone who would listen, who would care, who wouldn't give up on them. Another text came through. This one from Diane Chen. "My father would be so proud of you. Thank you for giving his story a voice. Thank you for making sure he didn't die for nothing." I had to set the phone down and breathe for a moment. Diane had testified 2 weeks ago, along with Patricia Rodriguez and 8 other victims. Catherine Wells had testified too, bringing boxes of internal documents that showed exactly how Sterling's operation worked. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Sterling's empire was crumbling, and I'd helped light the match. My phone rang. "Rebecca Foster. You ready?" she asked.
As ready as I'll ever be.
Good. Thomas and I will meet you at the courthouse in an hour. Jordan, she paused. You should know that Sterling's legal team tried to get your testimony excluded this morning. They argued you're biased, that you have a personal vendetta. The judge shut them down in about 30 seconds. Of course they did. They're desperate. They know what's coming. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. When you get up there today, just tell the truth. That's all you need to do. The evidence speaks for itself. We hung up, and I finished getting ready. As I was gathering my notes and documents, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Marcus from the Golden Terrace, holding a cardboard box. "Marcus, What are you doing here? Had to make a delivery before your big day. He handed me the box. This came to the restaurant yesterday. Figured you'd want it sooner rather than later. Inside the box was a framed photograph, the Golden Terrace staff, all of us crowded together, smiling. Someone had written on the mat, "To Jordan, thanks for reminding us that speaking up matters. We're proud to have worked with you." There was also an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note from the restaurant's owner. "Ms. Matthews, enclosed is a bonus for your service and for demonstrating the kind of integrity we hope to embody. You're welcome back anytime, though something tells me you've found where you truly belong." The staff took up a collection too, Marcus added. Another 2,000. Everyone wanted to contribute. You changed something in that place, Jordan. People stopped accepting bad behavior from customers. Started standing up for themselves. You showed us it was possible. I couldn't speak for a moment, my throat too tight. Thank you, I finally managed. Marcus smiled. Go get him. Make it count. The federal courthouse was massive, all marble columns and intimidating architecture designed to remind you that justice was serious business. I climbed the steps with Rebecca and Thomas, ignoring the cameras and reporters shouting questions. Inside, the grand jury room was smaller than I expected, just a conference space with 2 rows of jurors and a court reporter. The assistant U.S. attorney, a sharp woman named Michelle Rodriguez, guided me through my testimony with precise questions. I told them everything. About Henderson and Associates and the pattern of cases. About Robert Chen and his destroyed business. About Patricia Rodriguez and her stolen retirement. About the documents Catherine Wells had provided, the shell companies, the falsified projections, the systematic destruction of families for profit. I spoke for 90 minutes. The jurors listened intently, some taking notes, others just watching with expressions that ranged from shock to anger to disgust. When I finished, Michelle asked one final question. Ms. Matthews, after everything you've been through, the public scrutiny, the legal threats, the harassment, do you regret speaking up that night at the Golden Terrace? I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said clearly. For 8 months, I hid from who I was because I was tired of fighting battles I couldn't win. But that night, I remembered something important. Maybe I can't fix the whole system. Maybe I can't save everyone. But I can tell the truth. I can use my voice. And sometimes, that's enough to start something bigger than myself. I looked at the jurors. Robert Chen died believing that justice didn't exist for people like him. That men with money would always win. I spoke up because I needed him to be wrong about that. I needed his daughter to know that her father's life mattered. That what happened to him was criminal, not just unfortunate. And I needed to prove to myself that I hadn't wasted 6 years of education and experience just to spend the rest of my life being invisible. The room was silent. So no, I finished. I don't regret it. I regret that it took me so long. That evening, I sat in the break room at the community health center, eating leftover pizza with Keisha and Maria while we watched the news on someone's phone. The anchor's face was serious as she reported the breaking story. Federal prosecutors announced today that billionaire investor Nathan Sterling has been indicted on 43 counts of securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The charges stem from a multi-year investigation into Sterling Global Investments' business practices. If convicted on all counts, Sterling faces up to 200 years in prison. Sterling's photo appeared on screen, his mugshot, actually, taken earlier that day. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without the expensive suits and the aura of untouchable power. The investigation began after a whistleblower came forward with evidence of systematic fraud affecting dozens of victims across multiple states. That whistleblower, Jordan Matthews, testified before a grand jury this morning. Matthews first gained public attention 3 months ago when she confronted Sterling in a Chicago restaurant, an interaction that was captured on video and viewed millions of times. My own face appeared on screen, footage from the courthouse steps. Keisha squeezed my shoulder. Look at you. Famous. Infamous maybe, I said, but I was smiling. My phone buzzed. An email from Morrison and Price, the law firm Catherine Wells had worked for. Richard Morrison had sent me a formal job offer, senior associate position, focus on corporate fraud litigation, salary that made my eyes water. Another email came through immediately after, from a legal aid organization in New York, offering a position working with fraud victims who couldn't afford representation. I stared at both offers, feeling the weight of choice. What are you thinking? Maria asked, reading over my shoulder. I'm thinking, I said slowly, that I spent a long time believing I had to choose between helping people and having a career. Between using my nursing degree and using my law degree. Between being safe and being powerful. I set the phone down. But maybe I don't have to choose. Maybe I can do both. Lisa appeared in the doorway, still in her white coat. Jordan, we've got a patient asking for you specifically. Says she saw you on the news and wants to talk about her father's investment fraud case. Think you can help? I stood up, brushing pizza crumbs off my scrubs. Yeah, I think I can. As I followed Lisa down the hallway, past examination rooms full of patients who needed someone to care, I thought about the girl I'd been 8 months ago. The one who'd convinced herself that staying small was the same as staying safe. The one who'd traded her voice for invisibility and called it peace. She was gone now. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who'd learned that power wasn't about money or status or expensive suits. It was about knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone convince you otherwise. It was about speaking up, even when your voice shook. Especially when your voice shook. Nathan Sterling had called me uneducated, worthless, replaceable. He'd tried to humiliate me into silence. Instead, he'd reminded me who I was. And I'd used every word, every degree, every language I spoke to bring his empire down. The patient was waiting in examination room 3, an elderly woman with worried eyes and trembling hands. I sat down across from her, pulled out my notepad, and smiled. Tell me everything, I said, and don't leave anything out. She began to speak, and I listened. Because that's what I did now. I listened to the people nobody else would hear. And then I fought like hell to make sure they were never silenced again. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. I truly appreciate you being here. If you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything and it keeps this channel growing. Thank you once again, and see you in the next story.